Are you ready to face what's coming? Because the next few minutes could change how you shop, store, and survive in 2025. Over the past month, I've been buried in USDA data, combing through global agricultural forecasts and talking directly with farmers and insiders who are sounding the alarm. What's heading our way isn't just a bump in prices, it's a full-blown avalanche that's already starting to hit grocery stores. I'm about to reveal 30 grocery items that are either skyrocketing in price already or about to face jaw-dropping hikes in the weeks ahead. These aren't just predictions. This is the hard truth backed by data, the latest industry insights, and real stories from people like you and me. You'll hear how families are struggling to adjust, how panic is quietly spreading, and why waiting even a few weeks to prepare could leave you paying double or worse. But don't panic just yet. I'm not here to scare you into chaos without a plan. I'll also share smart, practical tips to stockpile these must-haves without draining your wallet, and how to keep them fresh long enough to actually use them. The storm is here. Get ready to outlast it. Grab a pen, open your notes, and watch closely. This could be your survival guide for what's coming next. Number 30, salmon and other premium fish. Wild-caught salmon has long been a crown jewel in health-conscious grocery hauls, but if you're counting on snagging it at your usual price, brace yourself. A perfect storm is brewing in the waters where this premium fish thrives, and it's set to wreak havoc on prices. Here's the hard truth. Salmon stocks along the Pacific coast are plummeting. Marine biologists report fish are traveling hundreds of miles north, desperately seeking colder waters that are becoming harder to find due to rising ocean temperatures. For decades, fishermen could count on predictable, productive runs, but now they've gone from filling their boats in a few days to spending weeks at sea, burning through fuel that's anything but cheap, only to return with disappointing hauls. Farmed salmon isn't offering much relief either. Warming waters and disease outbreaks are decimating fish populations in aquaculture farms. To add insult to injury, the specialized feed these farms depend on has had its own massive price surge, spiking by roughly 45%. If you thought paying $12 to $13 for a pound of wild-caught salmon was steep back in 2023, you might fall over when that same pound nudges toward $20 or even $25 by late 2025. The time to act is now. Keep an eye out for sales on frozen salmon. Thanks to advanced flash freezing technology, grabbing frozen fillets might give you an edge. It's often just as nutrient-rich as fresh salmon from the seafood counter. Properly stored in your freezer, salmon can retain its quality for about 6 months, offering you not only a taste of summer but also some much-needed relief when future prices soar higher than the tide. Number 29, avocados. Avocado toast might be a comforting memory soon because the beloved green fruit is facing a grim fate. Prices first started climbing in 2023, inching up steadily as the situation at the source grew more dire. Michoacán, Mexico's avocado powerhouse has become ground zero for drought. Wells that once reached groundwater easily now have to go twice as deep. Farmers are struggling to keep their orchards alive on limited water supplies, and the result is heartbreaking. Fewer avocados, more stressed plants, and skyrocketing costs. The disaster doesn't stop at the orchards. Once the avocados are harvested, they're embarking on a treacherous and expensive trip north. Refrigerated trucking costs from central Mexico to the U.S. saw an eye-watering 35% jump in 2024 alone. Add border delays, which mean impatient reporters and sagging produce waiting to cross into the U.S., and you've got a logistical nightmare. By April 2025, agricultural experts fear avocado prices could jump by 45%. Yesterday's $2 avocado could easily hit $3 or $4 in the next few months, sidelining this kitchen staple for millions. If you're someone who can't imagine life without guacamole, it's time to prepare. Scoop up underripe avocados when they're more affordable and ripen them at home. Once they're perfectly soft, refrigerate them to extend their shelf life. Hardcore avocado enthusiasts should consider mashing them with lime juice and freezing the mixture for future meals. This method might not deliver the exact flavor of fresh guac, but it's a small price to pay compared to future costs. Stockpile now, save later, and brace yourself for the guac apocalypse. Number 28, cheese. Artisanal and aged. If you consider yourself a cheese lover, now's the time to double-check your budget because artisanal and aged cheeses are hurtling toward crisis territory. Parmesan, Brie, Gouda, and other dairy delights are all under threat. Here's why. The cost of dairy feed has gone through the roof. Energy expenses for running climate-controlled aging rooms have doubled, and European producers, particularly in places like France and Italy, are being hammered by extreme heat waves that are devastating milk production. Imagine losing 30% of your milk cow's yields in a single season. That's been a harsh reality for many. The situation is so dire that Italy has declared a cheese crisis, with some Parmesan producers in regions like Emilia-Romagna slashing their production by a staggering 40%. French brie makers aren't faring much better. The domino effect? Less cheese on the market, higher production costs, and gut-punching price tags when you finally reach for your favorite wedge. Cheese that used to sell for $20 a pound might soon hit $35 or even $40 in 2025. Even everyday varieties like cheddar and mozzarella are looking at price hikes of 15 to 25%. Your survival strategy? Leverage hard cheeses, which freeze surprisingly well, especially if you plan on shredding or cooking with them later. Seal them tightly to protect against freezer burn, and you can enjoy them without the sting of inflated prices. For the truly devoted, some specialty retailers offer cheese futures, where you can prepay for tomorrow's cheese at today's rates. It might seem extreme, but desperate times call for innovative measures. Cheese lovers, your stockpiling mission starts now. Number 27. Pasta. Pasta has always been a symbol of frugal comfort food, but as we inch closer to 2025, the cost of this pantry hero is anything but comforting. Global wheat shortages are shredding the affordability of spaghetti, penne, and macaroni, leaving millions bracing for price jumps. It begins with the fields. Extreme drought conditions in key wheat-growing areas like Kansas and Oklahoma slashed yields by 20% in the past year. Farmers are hesitant to plant at scale as the cost of irrigating crops climbs to unsustainable levels. A major contributor to this mess? Tensions in Eastern Europe, which have disrupted global grain exports, tightening supplies further. We've already seen a worrying trend. Store-brand pasta jumped from $1 to $1.50 or $1.60 in 2024. But that doesn't paint the full picture. By 2025, experts forecast an additional 30 to 40% increase. This could mean that more premium brands, especially those that rely heavily on imported durum wheat, could potentially double in cost. Here's the silver lining. Dry pasta has an extraordinary shelf life if you store it well. Got a cool dark spot in your pantry? Then you can start building your stash now. Look out for bulk discounts, especially at warehouse clubs or when your local grocery store runs sales. A savvy stockpiler I spoke to, Janice from Chicago, dedicates a whole pantry shelf to pasta. Between her meal prep routine and her kids' appetite, she burns through boxes weekly. Stocking up today can save you both time and heartache when the pasta aisle becomes a battlefield of markups and shortages. Number 26. Rice. Rice isn't just a staple in stir-fries or sushi bowls, it's the backbone of millions of households around the world. But even this dependable grain is feeling the pinch of global upheaval. India, the top exporter of rice, has been imposing export restrictions to keep domestic prices under control. This is bad news for the rest of us. Southeast Asia, another major producer, is suffering from severe droughts that are decimating crop yields. Thailand, for instance, reported a 15% drop in rice exports because of water shortages that cut into their second planting season. What does this mean for you? Well, prices are already up by 25% since last year, and predictions suggest another 20% climb by mid-2025. For families who rely on large bags of rice to stretch their grocery budgets, this could deal a serious blow. Suddenly, what felt like a small expense adds up alarmingly fast, forcing tough choices at checkout. The solution? Get ahead of the curve. White rice, if stored properly, can last up to 30 years. Use Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, and you've got a pantry staple ready to outlive even the worst price hikes. Brown rice is a little trickier due to its higher oil content, but you can extend its shelf life with vacuum sealing. Considering how inexpensive rice is now compared to its projected future costs, buying in bulk is not just practical, it's survival savvy. Lock it in while you can because this pantry MVP is quickly moving out of reach for many. Number 25. Peanut butter. Peanut butter might seem like a simple pantry staple, but this creamy, protein-packed spread is on the verge of becoming much less accessible. It's affordable now, but don't fall into the trap of thinking it will stay that way. The peanuts that make this survival food possible are facing a storm of challenges. Most of our peanuts come from the southeastern U.S., especially Georgia. Unfortunately, brutal weather has pummeled the region. Unpredictable frosts in winter and scorching summer droughts are putting incredible strain on the crops. The yield is suffering and the costs to produce peanut butter are climbing at an alarming rate. If that weren't enough, the cost of shipping peanuts to processing facilities skyrockets every month, driven by fuel prices that are just as unstable as the weather. One major peanut butter manufacturer has already announced a 10% increase this season, but industry experts predict another 10 to 15% spike in 2025. Sure, peanut butter might still be cheaper than steak, but when these price hikes hit, you'll feel it every time you add a jar to your cart. The good news? Peanut butter is a stockpile dream. An unopened jar can last a year or more on your shelf. Even natural peanut butter, which tends to separate over time, is easy to stir and use again. Keep your stash in a cool, dry place to extend its life even further. If you're a peanut butter fanatic or looking for high-protein survival foods, doubling your stock now will save you money and frustration. The creamy comfort inside the jar may seem guaranteed today, but by next month, it could feel like a luxury. Act fast and avoid disappointment later. Number 24. Whole wheat flour. Flour might not be the most glamorous grocery item, but it's foundational for everything from homemade bread to pizza crust. That's exactly why whole wheat flour belongs on your urgent stockpile list. Global disruptions in the wheat market are squeezing supplies tighter than we've seen in years. Whole wheat flour is particularly vulnerable. With its higher oil content compared to white flour, it's more challenging to store, and the supply chain issues are only magnifying the problem. On top of that, milling costs are rising fast. Expect a price hike anywhere between 25 and 30% this year alone, but as shortages worsen, it could climb even higher. Whole wheat flour isn't just another victim of inflation. Wheat farmers across North America and Europe are planting fewer acres as the cost of water continues to soar. It's a domino effect. Fewer fields, lower yields, higher milling costs, and swelling grocery prices that hit families where it hurts. By April 2025, baking even simple bread at home could cost significantly more than it does today. The reality is grim, but it's far from hopeless. If you stock up now, you won't just save money, you'll protect yourself against upcoming shortages. Whole wheat flour has a shorter shelf life than other types of flour due to its natural oils, but with clever storage, you can extend it. Place it in airtight containers and freeze it. Freezing extends the freshness for months, sometimes even longer. Just make sure to bring it to room temperature before your next baking session. Waiting for prices to stabilize could leave you staring at empty shelves. Prepare now or risk paying double for your next loaf of bread. Number 23. Sugar. You might think sugar is immune to major price spikes. After all, it's cheap and widely available, right? Wrong. The sugar supply chain has been quietly unraveling, and most shoppers don't even see it coming. Brazil and India, two of the world's largest sugar producers, are both in trouble. Brazil's cane fields face the same devastating drought affecting coffee crops, and India has taken drastic measures to protect its domestic supply. Export restrictions in some Indian states are further choking global markets. This dual disaster already has distributors scrambling, and futures markets predict a 20% or higher jump in sugar prices by next year. Every food product that relies on sugar stands to be impacted. Think candy, baked goods, breakfast cereals, and even processed snacks. Companies absorbing higher sugar costs will pass those increases directly to consumers. The price tags we see today might soon feel like a distant memory. If you bake regularly, the costs will hit harder than most. Refined white sugar remains inexpensive compared to other essentials, but the cumulative impact matters. $1 extra per bag might not feel like much at first, but it will sting as prices creep higher. To get ahead, stockpile now. The best part? Sugar, when stored correctly, doesn't really expire. Sealed food-grade buckets or airtight containers are your best friends here. You can even portion the sugar into smaller packages to prevent exposure to humidity each time you open your stash. When prices rise and shortages hit, you'll be relieved to have prepared while you still had the chance. Number 22. Salt. Salt is more than just a seasoning, it's a survival necessity. From preserving food to sustaining your electrolyte balance, it's one of the most versatile items you can have in your pantry. Here's the catch, though. Even salt isn't immune to inflation. While the raw material itself is abundant, the logistical nightmare surrounding transportation and packaging is driving up costs. Diesel prices are forcing trucking rates higher, and combined with surging packaging expenses, the price of salt has risen steadily. If you're a lover of gourmet salts, prepare for sticker shock. Himalayan and Mediterranean sea salts are already up by 15 to 20% and could climb further. The basic table salt you're used to may not feel the squeeze just yet, but specialty varieties are in short supply. Shipping disruptions, particularly for imported salts, add layers of expense to every pinch you sprinkle into your food. The good news? Salt lasts almost forever. It doesn't spoil, but it does require careful storage. Keep it in a dry, airtight container to prevent clumping caused by moisture in the air. And don't underestimate its potential beyond seasoning. Salt is vital for preserving meats, fish, and other foods, especially if refrigeration becomes unreliable or expensive. An upfront investment in a substantial salt reserve could serve as both a culinary and survival advantage. The clock's ticking, though. Stock up before salt joins the long list of household items you suddenly can't afford. Number 21, oats. Oats are a quiet hero in many households. They're versatile, healthy, and inexpensive. For now. But for how much longer? Canada, the world's largest oat exporter, is grappling with harsh droughts that have slashed yields in recent years. If weather patterns don't stabilize, the USDA projects another production slump that would ripple through global markets. It's not just about oatmeal. Oats are a key ingredient in bars, snacks, and even some beverages. A shortage in supply equates to steadily climbing prices for the raw grain and the products made from it. By April 2025, experts predict consumers may face an increase of 15 to 25% on oat goods. While this might not sound as extreme as certain other grocery products, it adds up. Your dependable bag of rolled oats for breakfast could feel like a luxury item if you're not prepared. Worse, any disruptions to Canada's exports could force retailers to introduce rationing, cutting off supply for months at a time. Here's how to outsmart these trends. Oats store exceptionally well if kept in sealed containers, away from humidity and pests. Vacuum sealing is a great option if you want to maximize shelf life. And even basic rolled oats can last for years in the right environment. Whether you're big on oatmeal or rely on oats for baking, now's the time to act. Stockpile those bags during sales and set yourself up for months, even years of flexibility. Today's prices are tolerable. Tomorrow's might leave you scrambling. Number 20, dried fruit. When you think of survival food, dried fruit might not top the list, but it absolutely should. Apricots, raisins, figs, and dates are little nutritional powerhouses that can keep you going in an emergency, and they even double as healthy snacks on ordinary days. The problem? These convenient, long-lasting foods are getting caught in a whirlwind of rising costs and scarcity. California's Central Valley, which supplies much of the U.S.'s dried fruit, is buckling under water shortages. Orchards and vineyards are struggling, squeezed by droughts and the rapidly rising cost of irrigation. For fruit growers, keeping trees and vines alive is turning into an expensive battle. Even when the fruit survives, the labor required to harvest and process it has gotten pricier by the day. That's not all. The Mediterranean region, a key exporter of dates and figs, has been hit with severe weather disruptions. Europe's persistent droughts and higher-than-usual temperatures are slicing into harvests, making imported dried fruits more expensive than they've been in decades. According to industry analysts, the price of dried fruit could spike 20 to 25% over the next year. What costs a few dollars today could become a pantry luxury item by this time in 2025. The good news? Dried fruit is a super stockpile-friendly food. If stored properly in a cool, dry place, dried fruit can easily last a year or more. Vacuum sealing or keeping it in airtight containers extends its shelf life even further. Keep an eye out for discounts, especially on fruit nearing its best-by date. Stores often mark these down, but they're still perfectly safe to eat. Stock up while you can. Because as prices rise and supplies dwindle, these once affordable snacks could become far too precious to ignore. Number 19, bottled water. It's the most essential resource we have, yet bottled water is quickly slipping into the category of can't afford to waste or overlook. At first glance, the idea of rushing to stockpile water might feel unnecessary, but think again. Extreme weather and skyrocketing fuel costs have turned something as basic as bottled water into a burgeoning crisis. Here's what's happening. Global heating has triggered droughts and natural disasters, boosting the demand for bottled water as a safety net. Simultaneously, the plastic resin industry is collapsing under inflated costs, meaning those convenient bottles you rely on are getting more expensive to produce. That's not all. Transportation, the backbone of the bottled water supply chain, is groaning under rising diesel prices. Shipping costs doubled between 2023 and 2024, and bottling companies are passing those costs straight on to you. By the end of 2025, prices could climb another 15 to 20%, making the bottled water you take for granted feel like a luxury. The takeaway here is all about preparation. Before costs spiral higher, grab what you need. If space allows, go for large water jugs rather than individual bottles. They're more economical, last longer, and provide more value. Thinking bigger? A high-quality water filtration device is a smart investment, giving you flexibility during emergencies while saving money in the long run. Portable filters are another option, especially for families who want to skip bottled water altogether. But don't wait. When disaster strikes and bottled water is suddenly scarce, you'll wish you grabbed those extra gallons. Water is life, and in 2025, life might start costing a whole lot more. Secure your supply while you still can. Number 18, vinegar. Vinegar might not scream urgent stockpile material, but this overlooked kitchen staple should be on your radar. It's not just for cooking. Vinegar is key to pickling, preserving, and even cleaning, making it a must-have for anyone prepping for uncertain times. But like everything else, the cost of vinegar is climbing, and it's not slowing down. Here's why vinegar is in trouble. Apple cider vinegar relies on apple crops, and wine vinegar comes from grapes. Both fruits have been battered by climate disruptions. California's vineyards, essential for grape-based vinegar, have been hammered by heat waves and drought, leading to smaller, less reliable harvests. On the opposite coast, apple orchards in the Northeast have faced unseasonal frosts, further tightening the supply chain. Add to that the rising costs of production materials like glass bottles and plastic caps, which are up roughly 25% year over year. Bottling companies are struggling to keep up, meaning the price of your favorite vinegar is creeping higher. While the hikes might seem modest now, experts predict they'll hit 15 to 20% by mid-2025. And this isn't just about dollars. Keeping a backup stock of vinegar is an investment in self-reliance. Whether you use it for pickling garden vegetables, extending the life of your food supply, or cleaning surfaces during emergencies, its versatility is priceless. Luckily, vinegar has a near infinite shelf life when properly sealed. Buy a few extra gallons now while the price is still manageable. When costs climb or supplies run low, you'll be glad to have this multitasking marvel on standby. Number 17, honey. Honey, nature's liquid gold, is under threat like never before. Climate change, pesticides, and habitat destruction are pushing bees closer to collapse, and we're already feeling the effects. Reports from beekeepers paint a dire picture. Hive losses across the U.S. ranged from 30 to 45% in recent seasons. Fewer bees mean less honey, and when you combine that with skyrocketing demand, the result is painfully clear. Honey prices are on the rise. Raw local honey, prized for its purity and health benefits, has seen its price tags double since 2022 in some markets. Even commercial honey brands are implementing stealthy price increases, with 15% hikes becoming the norm. Beekeepers warn that if the winter ahead proves harsh, 2025 could be worse still. Demand for honey as a sugar alternative and immunity booster continues to grow, but the supply just can't keep up. The silver lining? Honey, when stored correctly, never spoils. It might crystallize over time, but you can easily restore it to its liquid form with gentle heat. Airtight containers and dark storage spaces will help preserve its natural flavor and nutrients for years. If you spot honey on sale, don't hesitate. Stock up now because, as hive losses increase, honey might become one of the hardest to afford products in your pantry. Number 16, canned tomatoes. Canned tomatoes aren't just a convenience. They're a kitchen essential, acting as the base for pasta sauces, chili, soups, and more. Unfortunately, they're under siege from all angles. Tomatoes are uniquely vulnerable to weather extremes, and California, the state responsible for a large percentage of the U.S. supply, has been suffering. Droughts have choked off water supplies, forcing farmers to abandon fields. Meanwhile, unseasonal storms in 2024 flooded farms, wiping out large portions of the tomato crop. This dual disaster has led to a shortage that processors and packagers are struggling to compensate for. Contract prices for tomatoes climbed 16% last year, and experts warn that worse may be on the horizon if California's weather doesn't stabilize. For consumers, this translates into rising costs for everything from diced tomatoes to tomato paste. What's a pantry staple today could become a budget breaker by 2025. Take action while you still can. Canned tomatoes boast an impressive shelf life of 2 to 3 years when stored in a cool, dry place. Double-check for rust or dented cans before you buy, and don't be shy about snagging multiples when there's a sale. These compact, versatile cans can help stretch a meal and your budget when shortages and higher prices come knocking. Don't wait for the inevitable. Stockpile now and safeguard your recipes for the future. Number 15. Olive oil. Say goodbye to affordable olive oil because this kitchen staple is rapidly becoming a luxury. You've likely read about the near-apocalyptic conditions in southern Europe, where relentless heat waves and droughts are torching olive groves. Spain, Italy, and Greece, the trifecta of global olive oil production, are in crisis mode. Spain alone, which usually dominates production, has seen its olive harvest drop by a staggering 50%, while Italy is down 20%. Greece has been ambushed by unpredictable weather, leaving its groves in distress. Together, these countries supply the bulk of the world's premium olive oil, and their struggles are translating directly to your grocery bill. The numbers speak for themselves. Olive oil prices have skyrocketed by 130% since early 2024, and experts predict even sharper hikes in 2025. Matteo Bianchi, an agronomist with decades of experience in Mediterranean agriculture, has bluntly stated that climate change is outpacing the ability of olive trees to adapt. Combine that with skyrocketing shipping costs, and you have a perfect storm. One U.S. importer confessed their cargo expenses have tripled over the last 2 years. What does this mean for you? Affordable olive oil is disappearing fast. If you find a decent price today, don't think twice. Olive oil, when stored in a cool, dark place, remains fresh for up to 2 years if unopened. Larger tins are your best bet. They're more economical and a smarter investment than multiple small bottles. Yes, it might seem expensive up front, but waiting could mean paying $40 or more per bottle in a few months. Don't risk watching your favorite cooking essential turn into liquid gold in the worst way. Stockpile now, because olive oil affordability is burning up just like Europe's olive groves. Number 14, coffee. Calling all coffee enthusiasts, your caffeine fix is in serious jeopardy. This isn't just about your local cafe bumping the price of a latte. We're talking about a global coffee crisis that is brewing faster than your morning cup. According to the International Coffee Organization, coffee bean prices are forecasted to soar between 150 and 200% by mid-2025. That's not a typo. You might think today's coffee prices are high, but the worst is yet to come. The world's coffee powerhouses, Brazil and Colombia, are struggling to cope with nature's wrath. Brazil's Minas Gerais region, which produces some of the planet's best beans, has been devastated by drought. Rainfall is down by 25%, leaving farmers with drastically smaller harvests. Colombia, another key player, isn't faring much better, as irregular rainfall patterns wreak havoc on their crops. To make matters worse, global coffee demand has surged by 35% since 2021 as countries like China and India develop a serious taste for espresso. Few crops can keep up with that kind of demand explosion, and supply chains are buckling under the pressure. The solution? Buy in bulk and store wisely. Whole coffee beans maintain their quality for up to 2 years if properly sealed in airtight, cool, and dark conditions. You can even vacuum seal them to maximize freshness for the long haul. With prices poised to spike, you'll thank yourself every single morning when you brew that precious cup without panic. Coffee prices are about to turn your caffeine habit into a high-stakes game. Act now and secure your supply before this daily necessity turns into a wallet-draining splurge. Number 13, chocolate. If you're clinging to the hope that chocolate could evade the inflation crisis, think again. The sweet treat is rapidly transforming into a luxury item, and the reasons are as bitter as they are alarming. Ghana and Ivory Coast, which together produce over 70% of the world's cocoa, are grappling with relentless threats. Erratic weather patterns, punishing droughts, and the devastating cocoa-swollen shoot virus have ravaged crops. Some farming communities in West Africa reported losing up to 30% of their cocoa trees in just a single year. But the troubles don't end there. Labor shortages are crippling cocoa farming as young workers migrate to cities for better-paying jobs. Combined with skyrocketing transportation costs, the chocolate industry faces a grim reality. Major companies like Mars and Hershey's are already raising prices with no relief in sight. Premium dark chocolate bars, once $4 each, have surged to $6 or $7. And industry experts warn artisanal brands could soon hit jaw-dropping prices of $10 or more. Surveys from the National Confectioners Association show that many consumers are already cutting back. leaving chocolate lovers in despair. The time to act is now. Chocolate, especially dark varieties with high cocoa content, stores well for a year or longer if kept in a cool, dry environment. Sealed correctly, it remains perfectly edible and delicious. If you're a chocolate devotee, stocking up today could spare you from the heartbreak of unaffordable indulgence. Don't wait until chocolate becomes a treat for only the wealthiest buyers. Save your stash before the price surge melts your budget. Number 12. Eggs. Eggs have already given us a painful preview of inflation's impact, but believe it or not, things are about to get even worse. Early 2024 saw egg prices double practically overnight, and experts warn that by 2025 we could be looking at even greater upheaval. What's causing this chaos? Start with avian influenza, which has ravaged poultry farms across the country. Take Pennsylvania, for example, where a single outbreak led to the loss of 1.3 million egg-laying hens. These mass cullings aren't just devastating for farmers, they're slashing egg supplies when demand remains sky-high. Meanwhile, feed prices have skyrocketed. The corn and soybeans that fuel most poultry diets are up 40% since 2023, with no signs of cooling off. On top of that, new cage-free farming regulations are forcing major producers to sink millions into operational upgrades, sending production costs into overdrive. Even packaging isn't safe from inflation, with the cost of cardboard and transportation almost doubling in some regions. The result? Don't be surprised if you're paying $7 or $8 for a dozen eggs next year. But here's a survival tip many people overlook. Eggs can be frozen. Simply crack them into containers or even ice cube trays, add a pinch of salt to stabilize the texture, and freeze for up to a year. For those struggling with fresh egg prices, liquid egg products or bulk egg whites might offer a more affordable solution as volatility continues. Stocking up and freezing are your best defenses against future price shocks. Eggs might seem simple, but in the coming chaos, every carton will count. Number 11. Canned beans. Canned beans have long been the backup protein of choice, especially when meat prices soar. But here's the irony. Demand for budget-friendly beans is now driving their prices higher. Pinto beans, black beans, kidney beans, and more have already jumped about 12% in price during the first half of 2024. That might not sound like much, but don't be fooled.